That CPD show. My name is Chris Bright and I'll be your host today, and my guest today is Pastor Grayson Jones. Grayson and his wife Dell are passionate about seeing people transformed in Christ. A graduate of Mattersey Bible College with a master's in missional leadership, he first began leading a church in Darton, Barnsley, serving there 11 years before being called to what was then known as Doncaster Pentecostal Church in 2002, now Legacy Church. Grayson's vision is to raise, train and equip the next generation of leaders to pursue God and his kingdom. Grayson is also on the wider team at AOG GB as the church health lead. Pastor Grayson, it's so great to have you on the show today.
Good to be with you, Chris. Thank you.
Brilliant. Well, it wouldn't be Desert Island Development if we didn't talk about dessert. So I wonder, could you tell me what your favorite dessert is?
Okay, so I got to give you two. I've got to give you two.
That's fine.
They're both from the same foundation, so it's either apple pie or apple crumble with custard. So I don't mind either, and I don't have a preference for either, but both of them would sit the same. So apple pie or apple crumble with custard.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I'm a big fan of both of those things. If I had to force you into they're both there in front of you. And it's it's Sunday dinner, and you've got to pick one or the other. Which are you going for?
I'd probably go for the crumble, to be fair. The crumble.
It's a great shout. Yeah, it is a great shout. And yes, I actually had an apple crumble just the other day, and nothing really beats it. It's one of the most British things, I think.
Completely.
And especially in winter, which we're recording this in winter, there's something very warming and
homely and all of that stuff.
Exactly, and custard's a great choice as well. I don't think I can agree with if people say you put it with ice cream. I'm not sure. For me, it's got to be custard.
Yeah, ice cream is okay if you haven't got it, custard, but custard's got to be the top choice. And some people have cream. That's okay, but again, custard definitely the preference.
Well, I had some leftover crumble last night, and I couldn't find any custard in the house. Then I couldn't find any cream in the house, and I couldn't find ice cream. So I couldn't just have it without anything. So I went with yogurt, and I'm going to tell you right now, it's not bad, but it's definitely no custard.
Exactly. Yeah, yogurt's good on a few things, but custard definitely when it comes to the crumble.
Definitely custard. Well, my dessert today, I bought a few mini eggs with me, which are just a nice little snacky dessert to have, and makes me feel like spring is coming. So that was my dessert of choice today. It's always a nice choice. Right, we talked about the dessert. Shall we talk about some development resources? We'll go through each one at a time. So do you want to introduce your first development resource to us?
Yeah, my first book, it's an older book, but it's certainly in the sense of pushing me forward, my development, is Courageous Leadership, Bill Hybels. Obviously, over the last couple of years, Hybels have fallen out of trend in that sense, which we all understand the reasoning for that. This was written in 2002. I was just moving from the church you mentioned in Darton to Doncaster. And so as a workbook for a leader who was coming into a new setting, it was perfect for me. He talks about vision. In fact, most of the things that we almost take for granted find themselves somewhere in this book. So he talks about the church, the local church is the hope of the world, and its future primarily lays in the hands of its leaders. He makes that statement. I think the local church is the hope of the world has almost become trend, but it came out of this book. He talks about competence. He talks about chemistry and character for those you're looking for in leadership. Again, 3 C's, we might have extended that to 5 C's now, talking about culture and different things, but it's found in Courageous Leadership. And so for somebody who was coming out of a smaller setting, a church plant, going into a traditional Assemblies of God church that were 90 years old at the time, needed repurposing, it was the perfect book for me.
How did that book help you to be courageous when you were going into Legacy Church as it is now? How did it help you make those kind of courageous steps?
Yeah, I think what he gave more than anything was permission. And so he talks about, the stakes of leadership. Leadership is 101. We've got to make sure that we lead in. So he actually identifies, it was Twin Towers had not long out in 2001. So he talks about walking around the site and, everybody running around doing the things they would do. And then he brings that through to the church. And he just says, okay, if we're really going to take ground for God, if we're going to move forward, then we need leaders who are courageous. And so he talks about the whole visioning, getting a vision for your ministry, not being lay weight or swayed by people, but living for purpose. And he talks about it very well, but it's that whole thing about your weapon as a leader is vision. And so when we were moving into Doncaster, it's okay, what church do we want to see? And it's quite interesting. We were doing our staff meeting this morning, and we were talking about our next season. And I was saying, 20 years ago, guys, I was sitting in a new church environment, and what I'm living in now was what I was seeing at that time. Now we've got to look beyond that. We've got to look to the next legacy, if you like, the next generation. And so the fact that he talked about vision, the fact that he talked about having big, audacious, hairy goals, it's the thing from Jim Collins, but he uses that about having this goal where you're not living in the predicament that you find yourself, but you're visioning for your future. You're actually driving, you're building a strategy towards that. And so he uses all of those terms. Make the big ask. So he talks about when the financial challenge, sometimes you got to sit with people, ask, hey, can you help us in this? And he talks about the fact that some people will give to vision in this area, some in that area. So make sure you share in your vision, because people won't maybe give to your kids' work, but they would give to your youth, or they'll give to your building, but not to your. And so he opens up all of those things, which just gives him permission, or give me permission to think, okay, I can do that. I need to find leaders. I need to push in and develop people. How can we cultivate culture? Which way does God use me? So at the end of the book, he talks about walking with God. So do you fulfill your ministry in quietness and solitude, or do you fulfill it by purpose and building? And, he talks about all those different things, which again, feed back into, okay, I got permission to be me. I can be who I am as a leader, and then move forward from that.
I think that's a really important point, that I think for any leader, for them to not have to be someone that they're not to lead is so crucial, isn't it? Because, I think many church leaders might look at, they might look at the amazing leaders maybe in the United States or Australia or other places, or even in the United Kingdom, think, oh, have I got to be that kind of person? But it seems like this book kind of starts to show that you don't have to be that. You can just lead from and start from who you are. Is that kind of a decent assessment?
Yeah, and I think that's part of the courageous leadership side. It's knowing who you are, knowing what your vision is, and then leaning into that. Now, of course, we've all, and I'll talk about this a little bit later, we all bring our problems to the table because we are who we are. And part of discovering who you are is finding out who you maybe not need to be. But the fact that he says courageous leadership builds a dream team, pulls people together, isn't frightened in the room, isn't fearful of bringing big leaders around them. All of those kind of things help give a good perspective of, okay, right. So I don't have to be intimidated. I don't have to be worried. I don't have to be fearful. I can lead out of my gifting and my strengths, and I can actually bring leaders around for my non-strengths, which for me in 2002 was an important thing, because I was coming into a new setting. We had a vision. We wanted to lay that vision in, and we needed to change a lot of things at that time. The church was, as I say, very traditional. It was older. It had been established. Pastors had come and gone. And so for me coming in, it was right. I got a 25-year vision I want to process. I got to get on building this. And it really helped me anchor some things in my life that allowed me to develop what we've developed.
Yeah, it certainly sounds like a book that there's so many of those concepts that I've heard that we just take for granted these days. And so I think to go back to those original books that kind of have been, that have paved the way for what we almost take for granted in the 21st century, church leadership world. I think it's a brilliant suggestion for a resource for any minister to go through. So Brilliant. Thank you for that. Shall we dive into resource number two? What's your second suggestion?
Second one, this came out in 2015. So this is Sam Chand, Leadership Pain. This was a very timely, painful book in the sense of Sam Chand, world-renowned leader and coach. He wrote this book and he wrote it at the time. So I picked this up probably 2015, 16, just as I was going through some leadership pain. All leadership will go through painful experiences. But at that time, I was going through some issues and some things in my leadership that all of a sudden the book, if it did anything, it didn't help me in the pain. It helped me to stand in the pain. Pain is part of leadership. That's the mandate of the book. And if you ask me, what's the best part of the book? Just the fact that it says, if you were experiencing pain, then you're probably leading. And if you've been leading, pain is part of the game that you're signing up to. And I think what he does, he opens up the whole conversation of sometimes as leaders, we think that we can change things without pain. Sometimes we think that we can lead without pain. But at any time somebody stands up, there's pain involved because change has to happen. And that's where the pain comes in. And so at the time for me, it was a really helpful, almost like a backboard to my life that just said, okay, I'm going through this. I can get through it. This is part of leadership. And what he talks about is you can only rise to the level of your pain threshold. So when it comes to pain, if you give in at that moment, when you're feeling the pain, that's the lid on your leadership. So if you can push through and become better rather than bitter through the pain, then you have another level. You're into a new level. And for me, I think I was really important going through some of the stuff that we were trying to work through, things that I was going through internally. It helped me think, okay, so I've just got to get through this. Sometimes it's standing. Paul says, haven't done all to stand then. You know what I mean? It was that kind of thing that came to me. And it allowed me to understand it's okay to be in the pain. It's okay to understand the pain. The pain will grow you if you'll allow it to, rather than give into it.
Yeah, I'd be really interested to find out how you can utilize that pain, because I think most ministers will have witnessed and experienced some kind of pain in leadership, whether it's pushback to an idea or anything else. And what are some keys that you talked about standing up? Are there any keys that the book helps to unlock in terms of being able to just stand up? It's not getting rid of the pain, as you said, but is there anything that that book kind of unlocks about being able to stand up in the pain?
Yeah, the encouragement is that you go through pain because you bring in change. So leadership challenges pain. There's a sense in which if you're not bringing leadership, there's a sense in which you can live without pain. But if you're going to be a leader, then understanding that there's going to be pain. Sometimes I think the problem for us is we do fall into the trap because we're so positive as Christians, as faith people, that everything is going to change and it's going to happen easily. We're going to get this vision done. We're going to climb this mountain, but we're not going to be out of breath. We're going to go up as if we're going down. All of those kind of things. And I think what the book says is standing and understanding pain is a part of this. And what he does at the end of each chapter, he gives a reference of a church or a leader who's gone through pain and why they went through it. Sometimes it can be, somebody let them down, somebody failed them in leadership, somebody, maybe a board member or a board went against them, maybe they lost their job. And he talks about how they transitioned through that pain and kept their heart clean, but then come out the other side and were able to go again. Sometimes we can't fix what happens to us, but we can always fix what's happening in us. And so it's that thing of, okay, guard your heart. It's the wellspring of life. Make sure that you're thinking correctly about what's taking place. Own where you need to. And that's obviously part of pain. Am I making the mistake here? Have I done wrong? Is there something I need to correct? So all of those things, as you walk through it, it helps you understand, okay, I'm not alone in this. I think that was the key for me at the time. Reading each chapter, at the end of each chapter, these are good leaders experiencing some pain, right, okay, this is not foreign. This is actually the ground we're in. And, we look at David taking on Goliath, and that's brilliant. But there were plenty of times at Ziklag when his men wanted to stone him, and, all of that reverse kind of thing going on. Life is complicated, leadership is complicated. But as we stand and understand what God is building in us, then he can make so much more out of us because of the ability, if you like, to understand the pain better. So I think it was that understanding of pain that was the power of it for me. Okay, this pain can build me rather than break me if I'll stand through it and if I'll activate what I need to.
Great. Yeah, yeah. And the best example I think in scripture is Jesus. He had so much pain in his leadership, and to think that we can go pain free in our leadership if Jesus didn't. And you look in the New Testament, you look at Peter, you look at Paul, they all of the apostles, they faced pain in their life, and I think that's a sign that can be actually an encouraging sign. It can be a comforting sign that we can take comfort that all the the great leaders before us and Jesus himself has experienced pain in leadership, and I think that's definitely a comforting thought. There's another thought that I had, which was I heard a quote from someone in America called Dan Ryland, who's a pastor out in Atlanta, and he said that if you change something and no one gets mad, that you just change something that no one cares about.
Completely.
And I think I think that probably starts to unlock what Sam Chand is seeming to be getting at in this book. Is that kind of on the right angle of things?
Yeah, completely. And I think as leaders, we are taking people where they don't want to go. You know what I mean? That is the thing that we're doing and moving them. It's not that they don't want to go there. It's like all of us, we're resistant to change just by the nature of being human beings. We like comfort, we like predictable, we like, oh, this is the way we do it. And then as a leader comes along and starts to move them, it's painful for people, but that means painful reactions. And I think, the porcupine comes up very often and we end up feeling the prickles of people. Pain is part of the deal.
And I heard something recently, which was if you take the Exodus story as a metaphor, we think in church leadership, it's we're leaving the Egypt where we were, and we're going to go into the promised land, and we forget the 40 years of testing in the wilderness. And sometimes you can leave something where you say, okay, we can't stay here, and where you go to, everyone kind of gets upset because they back there was better. So I think that there's so many brilliant stories in scripture. I'm sure that this book as well speaks to that. So yeah, I think that's a really fascinating topic that I think every leader needs to read into. So thank you so much for that. Let's go on to resource 3, shall we? What's your third resource?
Yeah, my third resource comes out of, in some ways, the leadership pain, which is Christian counseling. So just to give you an understanding, so I'm like 33 years in leadership. So 33 years, I wouldn't say I've opposed counseling, but I've always seen it as yeah. No. But I went through something like I was talking about the leadership pain thing. I went through this couple of years, about 5 years ago, of pressure, tension, pain. And what that did, it didn't define me, but what it did, it almost, it's like two tectonic plates opened. And now all of a sudden, insecurity, fear, all of these things started to flow out, which I thought I was managing, but everybody around me saying, Gray, you're more angry. Gray, you're not here, you're not present, you're this, that, and the other. My family started saying it, my wife started saying it. And because of what I'd been through, it had almost revealed an insecurity within me. So I found myself speaking at an area event and found myself stuck. I just walked on the stage and it almost as if it hijacked me. And then I thought, okay, I need help. I need help here. It's taken over. So I was talking to one of my mates. He said he'd been doing some Christian counseling, got me in touch with this counselor. And so for about 8 months, went on a journey with her. And I talked to her about, I've got this happened, this happened. She said, yeah. Let's talk about you. Talked about me, discovered who I am. And through a process of counseling, help, just reflection, she did two things in specific things. She helped me to meet God completely differently to how I'd met him before. So the revelation that I had of God and how he spoke to me, how he thought about me, that helped me unlock some things where I've, 36, 37 years I've been a Christian, but I would say over the last year, I've had some encounters with God that I'd never had before. That's simply because she led me to a place of openness that I didn't know I could go to. The second thing that she did is she said, well, let's look at your past. We talked about different things. And slowly I started to think, okay, so what's happening? Because she said, what tends to happen is something happens in your childhood and then it reflects all the way through your life. So what's the pattern of your life? And we went through this process. And what I discovered was at 4.5, I was taken to school, 4.5. I walked into the school, into the class area. I was taken into this first class. I found out I was a bit older and I was taken to this next class. I can remember right now, I can remember pulling back because as the door opened, all the class was sitting there. They were all already in class and I felt like the outsider. Felt I didn't belong, felt I wasn't wanted, felt on show. And that became almost like a default for me. And as she helped me understand that, the only thing I can say is that has broken me free more than any other thing I've had in my life. And today, I talk to my family, I talk to people in the church, I'm a completely different person because of that one encounter, because she taught me to reimagine, not reimagine the circumstance, but to reinterpret it. She said, if your belief is wrong, your actions will be wrong, your thinking will be wrong, and your feelings will be wrong. And so one of the things she said to me, she said, what we're trying to do is we're trying to cultivate some new language for you because you need to speak to your 4.5-year-old. So I said, why do I need to speak to my 4.5-year-old? She said, because every time you find yourself in that place, your 4.5-year-old is speaking to you. And all of a sudden it clicked into place. That's what's happening. I'd walk into a room, my 4.5-year-old would say, you're not accepted here. You don't belong here. You're not good enough to be here. You're not. And I'd have that running through my head. But she said, I can help you with that. And she's helped me to understand you're 60 now, you're not 4.5, giving me control mechanisms and all the rest of it. And so it's been so helpful just to get to the place of, so I genuinely used to think, and I've thought this all my Christian life, that every time any speaker gets up, they're terrified of the situation because I was. And then you talk to people. I used to talk to my wife and say, you'll freak you out. You'd never get, worried. Or she said, oh, I get a bit nervous. But what was happening is my 4-year-old was controlling the environment for me. And I'm not suggesting that everybody needs counseling. I'm not suggesting that, we've all got this thing deep within us but for me, it had become this, because of the tectonic plates moving, it had dominated my life and now was playing a significant role. At the age of 60, I found that it was hijacking me. And through this process, I think I've broken someone that's probably been with me all my life.
Wow. Grayson, I mean, first off, thank you for being so vulnerable and honest to share that. I think it's an incredible thing for me and for the listeners to hear on that. I'm wondering if for any minister that's thinking, okay, maybe that's I resonate with that. How would you recommend they go about starting to look into Christian counselling? Because I think it can be a bit daunting, and those kind of steps can often be the kind of barriers to entry. So how did you find the right counsellor and find the right service that was the things that were right for you?
Yeah. So basically, I had a mate who had been through some counselling. I was talking to him and he said, well, actually, and for him, this counsellor was in India, but she was coming over to his church, doing some things with him and his church. So I visited the church, met with the lady. She's an Indian lady. She's based in India. Talked to her for an hour and a half, I think it was. Found myself opening up to her like I'd never opened up to anybody. And she was, just saying, tell me what's going on. And then I said, yeah, I need help with this. So I've been doing it on Zoom since May last year. It's probably the best course, definitely the best money ever spent. It definitely is, been a real help for me, but literally on Zoom. I think part of my fear, which may be part of everybody else's, oh, I got to travel somewhere. I've got to go there, and I've got to. She's a Christian lady. We pray at the end of it. There's no force. She opens up. Um, and yeah, there is plenty of places you can access it if you look for it. And you can do it online. It's cheaper. It's obviously easier. And it just means that every hour and a half weekly at the moment, I'm just coming to the end of it. And yeah, it's been significant in my life. So if somebody wants to know, just email me, grayson@legacychurch.co.uk. More than happy to share details. And then you can jump online, have a look at it, see if it suits you.
Fantastic. And with continuous professional development, we are going to be including receiving counselling as part of development, because we recognised in the planning that from different people's accounts that actually this is a humongous development tool opportunity for any minister. So we'll definitely be including that, so you can log your hours that you've had, and that will go towards development goals, which I think is just a wonderful thing. And it, I think when we think about development, we can think about books, and of course those things are fantastic, and courses and things like that. But counselling and taking that time just to have someone that listens to you, and everyone that I know, ministers that I know that I've had counselling, all recommend it. So
definitely, yeah. I think what sometimes happens is we feel, because we're people of faith, that and especially leaders. I'm a leader, so I'll get over this, I'll push through. And there's times when you have to stand, like the leadership pain. Some chances you have to stand, but sometimes you got to make sense as well. It's okay, what's going on here? What's working in me? And I think that's the thing for me. It's okay, this is residue. This is keep coming up. It keeps coming up. It's not the feeling in the moment. It's not just a pressure that I've got because of this. This is coming out because of what's in me, and the pressure is forcing it out. It's not bringing it on, and that's the difference. I think if you're going through something and you think, oh, for that 3 months I felt really bad, but I'm good now. Well, that's okay. But if it's recurring, there's probably something that just needs teasing out, and it's like anything else in life. We just need some reflection and tools to know how to do that. And counselling can help us with it.
Yeah. What's the how do you think what's the change that you've seen in yourself and in your leadership as a result of counselling? Have you noticed any sort of specific things now that's either something's easier or something flows differently, or what's that kind of impact been for you?
I think I'm much more aware of myself. So I'm much more aware of how I'm feeling, what I'm feeling. I was quite flat, if you like, one-dimensional, no highs, no lows. Now I'm aware of my feelings. Why am I feeling this? What's going on? I think preaching-wise, I'm much freer, so much more open, much more vulnerable. So in talking about with her as counselling, talking to her about counselling, I'm free to talk about any problem, any issue, anything I'm going through. I don't feel as if I've got to close down on it. It's like, this is me. We're all a work in progress, and that doesn't mean airing your dirty laundry, but you know what I mean. It's accepting, no, this is who I am. This is what I'm working on. I'm working through this. I think it's given me a better dimension of faith. So I understand God is for me, and He's working in me, and He's got a purpose that He's working through me, but He loves me. So all of those ingredients coming together has definitely allowed me much more instinctive leadership in the sense of faith, but also solid leadership in the sense of knowing who I am, knowing where I'm going. Okay, I'm not good at that. I don't have to be, but I'm pushing forward in the things that I need, and I'm calmer. So my wife sits beside me now, and instead of, great, stop it, because I'm talking to the car in front of me and getting annoyed and frustrated. And we all do a bit of that, I know, but I was overbearing to the point of I was frustrated and pushy, and all of that has now diminished simply because I'm in control of my emotions.
That's absolutely fantastic to hear. And I think that I think having counselling as part of CPD is going to just be a wonderful thing for all our ministers, and recommend that to anyone if they feel, if they resonate with what you're saying, Grayson, just to kind of be courageous, as you said at the start, and move towards that. So yeah, thank you so much. I've loved hearing your resources that you brought today. It almost feels like the apple crumble itself. You've had the apple of the courageous leadership. You've had the crumble topping of leadership pain, and then the lovely custard of counselling. So I think it's been a perfect perfect combination. Grayson, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been really great speaking with you.
More than welcome.